Welcome to Stock Market Today, sponsored by Interactive Brokers. It's Alyssa Corum here with Ken Shreve, and on the show, we're going to be breaking down the chart action for KLA, as well as a look at Netflix, pretty ugly after the earnings report yesterday, and also taking a look at Match Group, following up on that, one of the names that we've been tracking. But first, we want to take a look at the major indexes. The NASDAQ was able to reverse higher, closing up about 0.3%. The S&P 500 closing a gain of 0.4%. The Dow closing around the flat line after spending most of the day in negative territory, with some commentary from the Fed boosting everything.
Yeah, a lot of late headlines in the afternoon, but it was a resilient performance for the stock market, no doubt. The Nasdaq Composite was down about 0.6% intraday, and it looks like we're going to get a close up near its high as it holds above the 8,000 level. But yeah, in afternoon trading, we had Fed President John Williams say something very dovish, basically that it's better to regarding interest rate policy. Right. It's better to take preventative measures than to wait for disaster to unfold. And all of a sudden, the odds for a half-point cut at the end of this month have risen quite sharply. They were about 35% yesterday, and they rose all the way up to about 65-70%. So now all of a sudden, a half-point cut is on the table.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, pretty notable given. The odds are now really in the favor of that happening, and it being a half a point versus a quarter point, right?
So it provided a good cushion for the market today. Like I said, the Nasdaq was down about 0.6%, and we'll talk about Netflix in a while. That really did not have a good day at all. But shout out to the semiconductor stocks. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index at last check was up about 1.5%. You got some big chip equipment firms moving in the Nasdaq 100.
Exactly, a standout in that group, KLA. The ticker there is KLAC. It closed today with a gain of more than 6% in above average turnover, extending gains after a recent breakout from a cup with handle. So really bullish action out of the chip sector.
Yeah, so taking a look at the daily chart here, you can see a really bullish gain for the stock today. Not only KLA, but Applied Materials, Lam Research. But looking at KLA's chart, first it was a low volume breakout over a 123.53 handle buy point. That just happened recently. So volume finally came into the stock today. So I would argue that 129.13 would be a legitimate alternate entry here if you didn't want to buy that low volume handle breakout. And this stock still doesn't look all that extended to me, really, especially if you're looking at just the left side of the base there. But really nice move for KLA.
Yeah, still in range, and we do have earnings coming up on the horizon in just a few weeks.
Yep.
And elsewhere, speaking of earnings, Netflix, a pretty ugly day for the streaming giant. It closed down over 10% in massive volume, as that subscriber number was almost half of what the expectation was. So really weighing on shares here. But IBD investors were probably able to shield themselves from this type of action today, given our strategies for handling stocks around earnings season.
Yeah, I mean, this is a stock, actually, it was expected to weigh heavily on the NASDAQ 100 today, but the NASDAQ 100, because of strength in semiconductor stocks, actually did pretty well. But this is just a good example. I mean, the price action in Netflix was decidedly bearish today. The gap below the 200-day moving average, I mean, that is such significant technical damage that it's just not likely that anybody expecting this stock to, be keeping pace with the S&P 500 or even outperforming the S&P 500 with bearish action and heavy institutional selling today. This one looks like it could be a laggard for a while.
Yeah, and you don't want to be buying a stock on sale here. That's not what we want to see, because this negative action could lead to worse action, or at very least, maybe some potential resistance now that it's below the 200-day.
Yeah, and definitely fundamentals are a bit in question. You have to remember that Netflix has always sold at a premium valuation. It gets a very high price to earnings ratio because of a very consistent track record of growth. And even when you look at annual estimates for Netflix, they're still pretty good. But the big disappointment in overall subscriber ads was a pretty big miss. And
with Disney Plus on the horizon.
And competition coming from Disney Plus later this year. So this is a stock I'd be very, very careful trying to catch on sale here. Big institutional selling today.
We don't know exactly when the bleeding with that will stop, but let's move on to take a look at Match Group, which has seen several successful breakouts this year, adding to that with a breakout with a gain of over 4.5% in above average turnover. So this one looking pretty good, technically checking off a lot of the boxes that we like to see.
Definitely checking off a lot of fundamental and technical boxes. We did get a close near highs today, which was good. It broke out over a 75.38 buy point, still easily in buy range. Good volume behind today's move, and there's just I'll tell you a lot of optimism still about its Tinder dating app. I think it was Jeffries at the end of last month in June. They're forecasting 400,000 net new ads for Tinder, which would be an acceleration from the first quarter. So still pretty compelling growth story here, and great technical action for Match today.
Yep, that is right. All right, everyone, that's it from us for today. But before we go, we want to let you know that we do have a new episode of the Investing with IBD podcast that's out now. Of course, with it being earnings season, we have to talk all about IBD's earnings season strategies. So, I mentioned Netflix here. Well, how can you avoid that Netflix-like scenario? We have a couple of strategies for you, which you are very familiar with, of course, and you write our earnings column each week.
Yeah, always looking for, it's going to be a very busy week of earnings next week with Facebook and Amazon. So we're going to talk about some possible, call option strategies for those two stocks, as well as Chipotle, which continues to be a real standout performer. They have earnings next week as well.
All right, good stuff. And also you can check out our content in our newsletters by going to investors.com/newsletters to get those delivered to your inbox. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.